Welcome back. Today I want to talk about some of the many variations that you can do with this basic wire wrap. Part of the reason I love it so much is because, I've standardized it a little bit because I've discovered my personal preferences when I start making these. But you might find that you like doing things a little bit differently. So I'm just going to run through just some of the variations that you can do. You can give a different number of wires to decorate with on either the front or the back. Here's one where I've come around and I've sewn it in two places on the front. So those can always have different decorations. Here's one I brought around the front and I've twisted this wire a little bit, giving it a little extra texture, which I quite like. This guy here is a little black tourmaline, but I've actually used 6 square wires instead of 3. And I've only got one wrap on the very bottom here. After that, I've had to take my pliers and just grab onto this end wire and just bend it in just a little bit. And I've done the same on the back, except I've done it up here, where I've just grabbed this little spot and twisted it, and the same on the other side. Another thing I've done on this one, instead of doing my sewing with the same half round wire, I've used a 26 gauge wire, and I've used one piece of wire to do all of this sewing. There will be lots more opportunities to look at sewing as we go through the next pendants, but I just wanted to show you that there's always other options. I often use the same wrap wire as sewing wire just so they look the same, but in this case I chose to do something different. On the top here I had one decorative wire I coiled really tight, and I kind of just tucked it up underneath of this neck wrap. And it's not sewn in at all, but it's not going anywhere, and there's nothing there to catch on anything. So that's another cool little feature of this little guy. I also love the size. This is a great size for a pendant. Here's a bigger one. And this one also has, 5? And in fact, I haven't used square wires. I've used round wires. I don't do that as often because the wires tend to twist. When you have a square wire, because you've got flat sides pressed against each other, these wires are going to stay in the orientation that you put them in, and you're not going to get any weird twisting. But I thought I'd try it with round wire just to see. I was able to pull the back one back over the edge of the stone a little bit to capture the back. And the same with the front, because it's a cabochon and I've kind of got this angle here. It was a little bit tricky though to get these wires all the right length between these wraps. You'll also notice I did a lot more wraps on each of the 3 spots, and I only wrapped it in 3 spots. So if you want to do, oh no wait, I guess that's right, but these aren't halfway up. So if you want to do something different, you can still use your tape as a measuring tape, but instead of using the quarter points, maybe fold it in half and make a random mark on both sides and unfold it so that it's even on both sides. But it doesn't have to necessarily be in the quarter point. It can be up higher or down lower or wherever you want. But in order for it to look symmetrical, they need to be about the same distance from this bottom wrap. Another thing I've done here is I've woven the top of this bale. We will get into woven bales in the coming modules, so don't worry about this right now, but you can always put your favorite bale on any of the pendants you're going to learn in this course. So that's a beautiful piece of lapis. I've always quite liked that pendant. Here's another one. I've got 5 square wires in here. I did a bunch of stepped little tweaks with my pliers. On the back I kind of did regular wings, and then I had a lot of extra tails because I used 5 square wires. I actually had 10 wires, wire ends instead of 6 in order to tie everything up. So I played a little bit. I used 7 of them to come around. They came around in different places. I've never been 100% happy with this pendant, although it does catch people's eye. If you do want to do an intricate design with your wire ends, I absolutely encourage it, but I would also encourage you to pick a very plain stone to put behind it so you get that contrast and you're not covering up a beautiful stone. So pick your stone when you're going to do some decorating over it. The highlight of this piece is not the black agate stone that's in behind there. It's this feature on the front. So just try different things as you're working. This is kind of an interesting piece. This is like a super weird piece of blue kyanite. I did one wrap on the bottom. There's only 2 wires on this one. And then I separated the wires coming out of the wrap. I brought them around the bottom of the stone, and then I used the fat end of my bail making pliers and I made a loop going in the same direction from all 4 of these. They didn't end up exactly the same height, but they're pretty close enough that it looks okay. And then I continued up, and I had to do some weird stuff with this bail that I'd probably never do again, but it's secure, it's not going anywhere, and so it works. So that was kind of just a different design. I wanted to show you that you can really play with this. You can do whatever strikes your fancy, and it's a lot of fun. Here's another piece. I love this piece of agate. It's got a little bit of clarity down here, and it's got some druzy inside in here. But I started with 3, and in fact I used round wire again for this one, and I did my bottom wrap. And then I did my 2 side wraps, but instead of making wings in like this diamond shape, I actually grabbed a set of pliers that was exactly this wide, and I made these steps as it comes in to and out of my wraps. And I did that on the back too. When I came to finishing this, I didn't make my steps deep enough, and I wasn't super happy with how secure the stone was with just these steps. I found that I should have made the steps a little taller, and they didn't come around far enough around the edge of my stone to give me a secure hold that I wanted. So I took one of my end tails and I brought it around, and I did a lot of extra sewing. So I covered this entire step with sewing all the way around. So I spent a lot of time on this one, but I was able to make it so I felt like it was really secure and that stone wasn't going anywhere. Again, on the back, I kind of had these corners. I was happy that they came far enough around the stone to hold it securely, but they were kind of pieces that could catch really easy. So I ended up sewing with more half-round wire across these so that you didn't have anywhere you could get in on these corners to catch. And then I just had 2 tails from my bail wires, and I just did a couple little sewing things there. So I had to improvise, a lot on this pendant. But I love this stone so much that I just kind of kept going until I felt like everything was secure. So that's another, shape option. Instead of the wing shape, you can make steps, I guess would be a good word to call that. The next 2 I want to talk about are a little more advanced, and I don't recommend you try this right off the bat. In fact, I recommend you go through a few of the other modules, really hone in your skills, and then maybe come back and be like, I want to try prongs. I'm ready for prongs. Prongs, they're just a bit trickier. If they don't end up exactly the same height, they look really off. If they end up a little cockeyed, they look really off. So when you feel ready for it, absolutely try prongs. When I did this one, it looks like I had about 4 or 5 base wires, and I chose that depending on the thickness of your stone. So if you have a thicker stone, you might choose more base wires, or a thinner stone, you might choose less. So I've actually got 3 base wires just going around the edge of my stone. And then the one on this side, I've tweaked with my pliers to just make these little nubs to hold the back of my stone. And I actually made prongs. And to do this, I made a sharp bend on the end of these with a set of pliers that are a certain width. And then I also bent it 90 degrees that way. And then you have to kind of tighten this top. It's a little bit finicky. Maybe towards the end I will make a pendant like this for you and show you some of the finicky bits. This is just another design idea though, so I've got different amounts of wraps, but they're symmetrical. I've actually counted the wraps here and matched them here so that these 2 are the same distance from these 2 prongs. I've also used 3 bail wires on my bail, and I've twisted the middle one. I don't know if you can see that. It's a pretty subtle little feature, but I quite liked how that made it look. So this was a fun project, and it was something a little bit different, and these prongs are always going to give you a little bit of a challenge. So don't jump into these right away, but eventually they can be a lot of fun. This is another prong pendant. I wove this. It's actually only got 2 round base wires, and I actually wove this in a straight line. I kind of started in the middle, and I wove counting these, and then I made a prong on each side, and then I wove the same number, and then I made another prong, and I wove, and I made another prong, and I worked this way, and then I started wrapping it around my stone to figure out how much space I needed for these last 2. Now, this was one of my first attempts at prongs, and although it doesn't look too bad when you first look at it, I know that some of my prongs ended up longer than others. But it kind of worked out because the slab of garnet is not exactly parallel. I have one skinny side over here, and the side over here is a little bit fatter, so I put my longer prongs around the fatter part of the stone, and it kind of made it look a little more even, although it's actually not. So again, these are just some of the issues with prongs. I recommend you don't jump into them right away. But they can be a lot of fun, and they really help highlight the stone. The reason I did that on this stone, if I can get a lamp in here, is because, can you see this? This garnet is just beautiful if you get some light behind it. Well, you can't really see that in the photo, but in real life, it's really pretty. So I wanted to let as much light through it as possible, which is why I chose a setting like this. So there's always going to be different aspects of different stones that make you feel like, oh, I want to do something different for this one because I want to highlight blank, whatever feature of your stone you're trying to highlight. Or if it's not a stone, if it's a found object and maybe, you know, there's a little picture on it somewhere that you want to show up. These are all considerations that you have to make as you start wire working. But I hope you find joy in these challenges. I hope they don't hang you up too much. If you do run into a problem and you just don't know what to do about it, drop me an email. I'm happy to help you out. Send some photos with it and we can troubleshoot this together. I hope that's helpful. I really hope that gives you lots of different ideas. There's a lot of different artists out there that really have embraced this half round and square wire wrapping, because the design possibilities are just endless. I'm sure you're going to go onto Pinterest or something and find all kinds of examples of this style, but in completely different setups. So just a quick recap, some of the variations, you know, you don't have to have 3 wraps. You can do 2. You can do 1 at the bottom, like this guy. You can place your wraps in various places. They don't always have to be exactly at a quarter point. You just want to do something to balance them. You can alter the number of wraps. You don't always have to have 3. You might do 7 or 10 or, you know, any number of wraps. So don't get stuck on 3 wraps every time, just because that's one of my favorites. You can change all the designs. You have the tails. You can change the shape of the wings and make them kind of square rather than like the diamond shape that I've been teaching. Or you can eventually jump into prongs. But again, don't start with this. These are tricky. And if you're going for symmetry, these are going to give you grief. So get to this eventually, but do a couple more modules first. Get a little bit more practice under your belt, and then this won't seem quite as intimidating. I hope that helps. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.